This week, one of our many listeners called in during the week and had a very interesting question about destroying old data. So thank you very much, Jean from Oral Valley. You know who you are. Her question was a little bit personal. She wanted to know, should she shred, say that again, should she shred or destroy her husband's old floppy disks? So I answer that question about destroying your data when it's no longer in use, let me explain the reason why. Sometimes you have to think a little bit about how a criminal thinks. If a criminal wants to exploit data, they're going to find something that you have forgotten about, something that you haven't thought about, or something that they can access easily. If you were to take a bunch of floppy disks, even if they're older, there's a good chance that you may have old business information, maybe old letters, maybe old names or phone numbers of people. Some of the information can still be valuable. One of the questions that I had asked Jean when she was on the phone with me was, are there any tax information on these disks? And yes, she said yes. So even old tax information can be exploited. One of the main reasons why, because our Social Security number rarely changed throughout our life. So if you have tax information saved on these disks and the disks are not encrypted, obviously the people would still be able to use that information even in modern day if they had it. So now we're going to go into a little bit about how you can actually destroy data. Now, I have a short list here of ways to destroy the data, but I will say this in advance before I actually even say exactly how you can do it, and that is, if somebody really wants your information, there's lots of different ways that you can go ahead and get it. There are companies that specialize in reassembling drives. So you may think that you can destroy a drive and you can think that it's not readable. If somebody has enough money and enough resources, they can actually piece together drives back together so well that they can put it into a working motor and a working assembly and actually read the platters and read the data that was on that information. So nothing is 100% fail-safe, but the idea is to slow them down as much as possible. And we're going to talk a little bit about that when it comes to encryption. So the first way, I always have a problem with running out of time. So I'm just going to go down my list real quick, and then I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on each one. The first way is using a hammer. The second way is burning. The third way is overwriting. The fourth way is shredding. The fifth way is sandpaper or sand. And there's going to be two other methods that you can actually apply today, so that there won't be any need for you to destroy data later. And that is using encryption and also using cloud storage. So going back to that first thing, using the hammer, that's pretty self-evident, right? So you take the drive out of your computer and you bring it outside or to a hard surface. You take a sledgehammer or just a regular hammer and you just beat it and beat it and beat it until you feel that it's enough. Primarily, where you're supposed to be aiming that hammer is on the platters. So if you're using a mechanical drive, make sure that hammer is hitting the actual platters, which is the actual circle metallic discs on the inside. If you're hitting just one side of it, if you're just hitting the reader, then someone can remove the platters where the data actually lives, and then they can put that into another working drive, run it, and then get your data back. So you want to make sure that you're damaging the platters themselves, okay? And make sure that you're getting all the corners and all the surfaces. You may even have to turn it upside down and whack it from behind, whack it while it's standing up, Try different ways, because you're trying to either break, crack, scratch, or completely break off pieces of this platter, okay? Because that is where the data is. Once that is completely trashed and smashed, the chances of that data is so good as gone. Um, Again, not 100%, but it's as good as gone in my book. Okay. The next way is burning. So this is what we had talked about with Jean. So majority of her discs were floppy disks, and if we remember back in the day, you know, we had the 8-inch floppies, we had the 5.5-inch floppies, the 3.5-inch floppies. So those are all considered floppies, and the reason why they were floppy is because the disk inside was actually very bendable. You could actually remove the disk part, and it would just flop in your hand. It's like a floppy disk. So how do you, if you were to take a hammer to one of those, it would just, yeah, Tom is saying it would just cut them. But you know what? Cutting can actually, people can put them back together. Okay. So, cutting is great. So that's part of shredding that we'll talk about. But if you just take a hammer, obviously a hammer is not going to work because it's just going to bend out of the way and then flop back to its original shape. So, if you were to burn it, okay, you would actually change the shape. Now, I do want to stress, you know, in some of these, I want to say the environmental services, they would strongly disagree with burning, you know, pieces of plastic. But this is this is extremely small, okay, you know. And I think you could even get a burn permit if you would really like. Pima County still offers burn permits. I don't think the city of Tucson does, but from my research, the Pima County Fire Department still offers burn permits. So you can get a burn permit and you can get all your old discs together and just light it up. And the idea is to change the magnetics that's actually inside of the discs themselves. Magnetism is what contains the data, and magnetism changes when you apply heat. Okay. Also, you can also do this with with mechanical hard drives as well. Just make sure that the heat gets to the platters the same way with the hammer. Make sure you're doing that. The other way that you can destroy your information is by overwriting. So when you delete a file in your computer, it doesn't really delete. It really just puts it into an inactive status or puts it into a folder that the computer will no longer pay attention to. It's still there, and it will always be there until it is overwritten with something else. So the idea to destroy data is to overwrite what is currently there with gibberish, maybe with 010101s throughout the entire drive. You know, that can work. And there are lots of softwares out there that'll just put junk files on there that'll just fill it up with useless information. And the idea is that you may have to do this several times over, because there are some softwares that can actually look into the older readings and the older files that were overwritten. There are some softwares that claim to do that, but you might want to overwrite it several times in order to be safe. Also, if you're able to open up the hard drive, you throw maybe a half a handful of sand in there, and then you power it on. The action of the sand being in there is actually going to scratch all the discs that are in there, and it will make the thing irreadable. Even if somebody were to remove the platters, there will be nothing but scratches. Same thing with sandpaper. If you were to take the platters out and you just rub it really, really hard with sandpaper, you'll scratch it up so bad it won't be able to read at all. Okay? And again, there's always somebody that thinks that they might be able to you know, get data even after that's done. Also, here's something that you can do today, because this is, you know, we're talking about going into the past and destroying data that you may still have around the house. But if you encrypt your hard drive now with a very popular software called BitLocker, BitLocker is a program made by Windows, and it's specifically designed for Windows programs. But what it does is it encrypts your hard drive. So even if somebody goes into your computer, removes the hard drives, and try to read the drives, all they're going to get is gibberish. Okay, because it's only that computer that knows how to get the data off of that drive. Now, somebody can always go back and decrypt it, but it's going to take them so long to do that. But by the time that they decrypt it, the information is useless. That's the idea. So we're really just buying time. And the last thing is to start using cloud storage. Cloud storage is really the way of the future. So many options of memory and storing things in the cloud is becoming available, and it's extremely secure. The only way that you'll lose information there, or any way that the information is exploited, is if the companies start to violate their own privacy policies, and or somebody else is able to get or guess your password, which goes back to another type of password protection.